Can I talk from here, Justin? Okay. First of all, I want to apologize to Vaughn, my personal nurse, since my surgeries. She sent me some other masks that she feels are better, but it was too tight on my face, Vaughn. I'm sorry. I'm going with this one for today. So the law of karma, we could study this for years, lifetimes, and still just scratch the surface of it. You know, in Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda, whose teachings we practice here, he's in that beautiful oval frame there. He has a chapter called Outwitting the Stars. And in India, they use Vedic astrology. And not everyone is a good astrologer. It requires wisdom and intuition. And, but some are. And so I wanted to tell a tale. Many of you know I was born in Suriname, Dutch Guiana, at the northern part of South America. And believe it or not, the second largest segment of the population was Indian. And so my mother, who was also born there, my father was born in Holland, but my mother was born there. As a young girl, she and her sister were 7 years apart, and they were raised across this big, wide river from the only city in the country. The river is the size of the Mississippi. On the other side, way out in the boonies, were sugar plantations. And my grandfather was a chemist, and he was stationed at those plantations. And so she grew up not only in a third world country, but in the boonies of a third world country, and she just hated it. But in any case, my story, my point today, I was just sharing with Riemann recently that my mother told me that when she was about 11 and her sister would have been 4, this Indian man came to the door and he offered their mother, my grandmother, to do astrological readings for the 2 girls. And they didn't know this man. And in any case, he did that. And he told my grandmother that my mother's sister, the young one, was going to be very wealthy in this life, and things would come easily for her. And that my mother was going to have to work very hard for absolutely everything. Things would not come easy for her, and she would not become wealthy. She'd be comfortable, but not wealthy. And in fact, that's exactly what did happen for these 2 sisters. My point being that our karmas, our actions and thoughts from millions, if not billions, of incarnations, and they're all lodged in our spine. And a good astrologer is not predictive necessarily, but they read the karma of the individual. They did this for Paramahansa Yogananda as well as a young boy, and the astrologer said that he would marry. And the story that many of us know is that his family tried to get him married off 3 different times, and each time he refused, because he was an avatar, he was liberated, he was fully in cosmic consciousness and was dedicating this life to God alone. And so he foiled those marriages. He was not driven by, his life was not compelled by any karmas. They were purified. And so he was not. And the story goes that when you connect your life with God and Guru, karma doesn't hit us in quite the same way. You know, life, karma, is all about duality. When we're not one with God, we live in this dual world where everything is hot or cold, small or large, all the opposites. So my husband Riemann is in seclusion this week. And of course, this morning, he sends me some jokes. And he wanted to make sure everybody felt his presence. But one of them fits in really well right here. And believe it or not, it's by Ann Landers. And she said, at any given party, there's two kinds of people. Those who want to stay and be at the party, and those who want to go home and not be at the party. And she said, unfortunately, they're usually married to each other. I think there's a lot relating to that here. So karma is the opposites. Opposites attract, you might say in this case, but it's the reactive process. It goes back and forth, and like a pendulum, it will just swing forever until we get it to be still. And the way we get it to be still is with meditation. Meditation, the way we teach it, includes devotion. We make that connection to the divine who resides within us. Meditation stills the pendulum and brings us into silence. And silence is the voice of God. Be still and know that I am God. And so meditation brings us to a place where karma, that reactive process, is slowed down. In that same autobiography of a yogi, there's the chapter where Babaji gives Kriya to Lahiri Mahashai. And in that session, in that moment of giving him Kriya, he tells him that when you turn around and give Kriya to others, he says, always remind them of Krishna's words. Let's see. And now I've lost them. Even a little practice of this inward religion will free one from dire fears and colossal sufferings. And every week, if you come here in the Festival of Light, you'll hear those same words. In fact, the Festival of Light is not just a bunch of words. It is loaded with the wisdom that can help us to be free. And that means also to become free of karma. So what happens is our karma doesn't go away totally, but it's purified. So the way Swami Kriyananda, Yogananda's direct disciple, and Ananda's founder, the way he would explain it to us is that if you were to break your arm, instead you might just get a scratch. And so it mitigates the fear and the intensity of the experience of that karma. And there's individual karma, there's family karma, there's national karma, there's planetary karma, think global warming, things like that, that affect all of us, whether we're being really good about our carbon footprints or not. It's here, and as a world, we're needing to learn to deal with it. I was thinking about the national karma, and for 26 years in a row, every October I would go to Frankfurt, Germany to be at the International Book Fair there to represent Ananda's books. And the very first year I went, I didn't know anybody in Frankfurt. And our friends at Ananda Assisi had arranged for a woman who was a devotee and lived in Germany to host me. And we had connected. There was no email then, so we'd been faxing back and forth and writing to each other. And so she knew a little bit about me. And when I arrived, she had a little placard with my name on it, so I would know who she was. She was maybe in her early 40s. And the very first thing she said to me, she said, "I am so sorry for what we did to the Jewish people." She knew I was Jewish. She apologized, the very first thing she did, for what her nation, even though it was, led by a crazy man, what her nation had inflicted on my people. And I just thought that was so interesting. She felt it to the bones, and she was a delightful person. She was gracious, she was kind. Those thoughts were the furthest thoughts from my mind, but not from her mind, because of the national karma that happens when things like that take place. And so it's just an example of that. The last thing I want to just touch on is people self-judge. I've seen it again and again. Someone will come to talk to me. They share with me that they have a serious illness that they just found out about. This has happened several times. And what comes out in the conversation is they're judging themselves. Well, if I've gotten this, I must have very bad karma. And so they don't want to tell anybody, and they're ashamed of having whatever this illness is. And I think we all recognize it to a certain degree. Everyone deals with that. And what I say to somebody like that is, it could be karma, but there's also another explanation. It could be tapasya, as they call it in India. It could be a test of purification. It could be a test for you to raise your energy bigger, higher than the test. And in that effort to put out energy and to overcome, we grow spiritually. Ultimately, it's the only way we grow spiritually. And when we understand that, then we can begin to view absolutely everything that happens to us or appears to happen to us or comes to us as grace. Karma is also grace, that is to say, the opportunity to work things out, and if you want to be free, then you embrace that, whatever it is that comes to us, and you see the light in it, and you raise your energy, you get uplifted, literally, and you rise above that test. You rise above that tapasya. And so, it just can sort of wipe away the guilt of our Western cultures and lift us in light. So I leave us with those thoughts. Actually, I had one example that came to mind of, I forget which famous saint it was, but she was a nun. And she had another nun in the convent who greatly resented her and gave her a very hard time. But she, the saintly one, just was always kind in return, worked as hard as she could, and then eventually, at a certain point, she didn't know it, but she was ill, and she couldn't work anymore. And this difficult nun was asked to nurse her. And while she was nursing her, she saw this massive cancer on this saintly nun's leg. She endured everything, the pain of that, with just equanimity and kindness. And this other nun, the resentful one, of course, saw her error in this circumstance and then served her for the rest of her days, which were not many. But why would a saintly nun get this ugly cancer on her leg and take her? Tapasya, blessing. Swami Kriyananda tells the story of needing to give a Sunday service many years ago, and he had a kidney stone attack. And he was in agony with pain. And then finally, a few minutes before the service, he talked to Divine Mother and he said, if you want me to give this service, you're going to have to help me out here, take this pain long enough so I can do that. And the moment he said that and walked out, the pain was gone. Now, was the kidney stone a karmic thing for him that he had to endure? Maybe. Was it tapasya and purification? And was it there to show the rest of us, to give him a story that he could share about the divine blessings that come when we give our lives to God? So this is the antidote, you might say. And it's not helpful. We don't know what our past lives were. We don't know what we've done before, what harm we might have caused another person. Maybe we know some in this life, but we don't know most of it. We don't need to know. We just need to embrace the tests that come with God, calmly, in the stillness, and bless, recognize the grace that has come. That's it. That's karma. That's the end of the story. Joy to you.